We've gone past the first week of VCT regular season stages in each region, and it's time to talk about a group of teams and talk about if they're struggling or if this is just a slow start. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today we will be looking at 6 different teams, 2 from each of the regions, Americas, EMEA, and Pacific. These are teams that either haven't been able to live up to expectations or maybe just had a bad first 1 or 2 games. This is just the first week though, so most of these teams that you'll be seeing on the board when we cut to it have just played 1 game. So obviously that's going to be something we're going to be taking into account, but I want to go through these teams and talk about if these teams just aren't going to get to where they were expected to. So as I said, we have teams from EMEA, Pacific, and Americas. I don't have any China teams on the board because I just don't know enough about China to feel comfortable talking about any 2 teams. I don't really know where the expectations are for any of those teams aside from EDG, so I figured we stick to the 3 regions that were in the VCT last year. So we're going to be starting with EMEA, starting with the team that a lot of people are talking about right now, and that is Fnatic. For their MVP, I chose Leo. I mean, you can make an argument for Alphayear, and on a good day, it should be either Durka or Alphayear being the team's MVP. But Leo has had the better recent performances so far, so I figured I would put him on the board. And one thing that's really concerning about this team, especially after their loss to Team Heretics, is this team's record on Lotus is not good. Granted, they've only played it 3 times, so maybe they can bounce back like Sentinels did on Split when they started to lose on that map at Madrid. But this map last year was Fnatic's best map. They were probably the best team in the entire world at the map. They basically just got a free win on this map anytime they played it last year, so the fact that they haven't been able to win on it since they played Vitality is very troubling. For a team that has set the expectations very high for themselves, wanting to win every international trophy this year, they of course did not even make it to Madrid, so they can at least go for the last 2. Seemingly not having a deep map pool right now is going to shoot those chances in the foot. Thankfully for their next match, they are playing against Giant X, a team that has also come out pretty flat so far. And while they've only played their first game of the regular season stage against Team Heretics, who are a very good team, they look like they haven't skipped a beat and have maybe improved since Madrid. And now Fnatic have lost to both Madrid teams in Carmine Corp and Team Heretics. What is troubling about that, even though it is a small sample size, is they've now lost 0-2 twice in a row. The last map they won was against Vitality in the first bracket of kickoff. They did beat Vitality 2-0, so it was a good win and an expected one at that, but not being able to even get 1 map win on Carmine Corp or Team Heretics, despite how good those 2 teams are looking, that definitely is concerning for the team that was looking like the best team in the world last year. I do have my concerns about Fnatic this year. They are not looking as dominant as they did last year. Their region in EMEA has gone a lot better since last year, so teams will be gunning for their top spot and already have been successful at it. And for them, I was really hoping that they would come into the regular season stage just with the fire lit under them, and even Boaster talking on a podcast saying that he thinks he could have beaten pretty much all of the Madrid teams, which I personally think is too bold of a statement to make, especially since he came out really limp against Carmine Corp. So if they truly believe that they're the best team in the world, they have to start acting like it. I know that they were sick for their match against Heretics, and that could definitely play a factor in why they weren't playing up to snuff, and that is an unfortunate thing. And Team Heretics, losing to them right now doesn't look too bad. They are a very good team, and their schedule upcoming isn't too bad. After Giant X, they play Gentle Mates, then Koi, and then Foot, and then Na'Vi. Foot and Na'Vi are definitely going to be the hardest games out of those 5, but you have to be able to win at least those first 3, because if they lose even one of them, it's going to look very bad for Fnatic going forward. Moving on to the second EMEA team, it was kind of hard to find a team that you can really put on this board and say is really not living up to expectations, because the whole middle of EMEA is pretty just up in the air right now. But I decided to go with Vitality because expectations were set high for this team last year, and so far it hasn't looked great. They haven't looked terrible or anything. They did lose against Fnatic at kickoff. They did beat Gentle Mates twice, and then they couldn't beat Carmine Corp. And now to start of stage 1, they did lose to Na'Vi, who should be one of the top teams in the region. But my argument for not excusing them for that loss is the fact that Na'Vi and Vitality, those 2 teams should be pretty neck and neck. So the fact that they got 2-0'd by them, that definitely doesn't bode well. Trex has made his debut with the roster, so we'll see how he gets accustomed to it after missing kickoff. But with teams like Carmine Corp and Team Heretics looking like they're probably going to be the top 1 and 2 teams in the region, then Fnatic still probably going to maybe do something this year. Beating a team like Na'Vi is very important for this team, and they just couldn't get it done. So far, their worst map is Ascent. They have been struggling on it, 0-2 record on it so far. Their next match is against Team Heretics, so that's going to be a very tough ask for this team. Their one after that is Foot as well. So 2 teams that, they're going to be competing with to potentially get a spot in the next international. So you at least need to beat Foot. I don't think they win against Heretics, but if they, are able to put up at least 3 wins, they should be in a playoff spot. So far, they've only been able to beat Gentlemates and Koi. So any other team above that line, they have not been able to beat so far. So for Vitality, the talent is there, but I don't know if it's going to mesh well enough this year to really truly be competitive, especially with teams like Carmine Corp and Team Heretics coming out of nowhere. So we'll see how it goes for them. The EMEA kind of mid-region is going to be very competitive, so we'll see if Vitality can maybe get on a roll here. If they can beat Heretics, that would be huge for them, but as I said, I don't know if I see that happening. Moving on to the Pacific teams, we start off with T1, who have gone 0-2 in the Pacific so far. Losing against PaperX, not a huge deal. PaperX, especially with Jane back, is going to be extremely good, and they are going to be gunning for Gen G for that top spot in the Pacific. But before the season started and during kickoff even, T1 was seen as potentially that fourth best team in the Pacific. So the fact that they've gone off to this 0-2 start, it doesn't bode well for their chances. They gave Detonation Gaming their very first win in the entire VCT, so that's just, I know DFM played really well. Detonation focused me. I definitely thought going into the season that they're definitely not going to be as bad as winless as they were last year. But T1 should be able to beat that team, and now their upcoming schedule is going to be very tough. For the MVP, I chose Rossi. You could say Accurate as well, but Accurate right now has a wrist injury or hand injury or something like that, so we'll see if he sits. I would say you should probably sit him if he has an injury, but T1 does not have an extra player, so do you put a coach in? I don't know. But Rossi has been very consistent so far, so I put him on there. For their worst map right now, it looks like a Ascent 0-3 record on that right now, so they are struggling. And talking about their upcoming schedule, their next match is against DRX, a team that they should be neck and neck with in the standings. And that's going to be a very tough ask. DRX, they did have those last minute roster changes because Flashback unfortunately had to step away. For T1, it's important for them to get those wins over that kind of mid-range and lower range teams of the Pacific. That loss over DFM was definitely very devastating to their chances at even qualifying for playoffs, because they need at least 2 wins to be able to qualify. And if they lose against DRX, that is a 0-3 record to start off, and then you have RRQ, Talon, and then Zeta after that, and then Gen G to end it off. So if you can maybe get 3 wins over Rex, Regum, Kion, Talon, and Zeta, if you can win those 3, then you're in a good spot. But there are a lot of teams improving in the Pacific League so far. So T1, you definitely got to watch out. You definitely got to be prepared. So I hope that their chances go well. Moving on to the second team in Pacific. Again, this was kind of a hard choice, kind of like EMEA. Again, this has been a very small sample size for teams just overall so far. But I did go with Team Secret, who unfortunately are also 0-2 in the Pacific. Team Secret is one of those teams that has shown flashes of greatness, some flashes of good talent, and has been able to upset some really good teams in the past. But so far in 2024, they haven't been able to put much together. They did make it to the playing stage at kickoff, and while they did beat Zeta, they did lose against Gen G to really no one's surprise. Gen G is a very good team. Losing to DRX in their first game of the season, not a huge deal, but then losing to RRQ, who do look better than they did last year, that is definitely something that is to be concerned about for Team Secret, because those are the kind of teams that they need to be better than. For the MVP, I chose Envy, or is it Envy? I'm sorry if I said it wrong, but he has been one of the more consistent players. Right now, they are struggling a bit on Icebox. They were able to take Gen G and RRQ to overtime on that map, and they were able to basically just destroy Zeta Division last time they played 13-1 on that map. But if you're not able to be resilient and close out those long overtime matches, that is definitely concerning, because we've seen that teams that can be resilient can do very well in the VCT. For Team Secret, I still see them as a middle-of-the-pack team. I don't know if they're really going to make a lot of damage in the Pacific, especially with the improvements we've seen from other teams. But there's always a chance. I just don't know if I see it for this roster, and unfortunately, they're not off to a good start. Moving on to the Americas, this is definitely where I have the most to talk about, not only because it's the region I follow the most, but also because, Leviatan. So let's talk about Leviatan. So again, it is just the first game of the regular season stage, so them losing to Cloud9, in most cases that wouldn't be a huge deal. Bad teams are able to upset good teams, or good teams are able to, just not be able to find it and then struggle against a team who they're expected to beat. But my main concern with Leviatan is how they lost to Cloud9. They had a really sloppy first map. They were able to get the win on it, but that second map, which has been a problem for them throughout this entire run so far in 2024, they weren't able to win much of anything. Then you have this long, drawn-out last map on Ascent, where it goes to, triple or quadruple overtime. Either way, it was super long, and they weren't able to get the win, even though they had a 7-5 lead going into their defense half. On Ascent, if you have the round advantage going into your defense side, you should be able to close out that game in most cases. Yes, 7-5 is only a 2-round lead, but it is a defender's-sided map, so they definitely should have been able to close that out, and Cloud9 just, they were ready. They were ready for a long, grimy, greasy game, and Leviatan just seemed like they weren't. For the MVP right now, it is Aspas. Aspas is still looking like the very talented Fragger that he was when he was on Loud. I did see on Plat Chat today that Sideshow was saying that, you know, even though he did get a lot of kills, especially on that last map on Ascent, that he just felt like the impact of those frags weren't exactly super important, which is something to keep in mind. Even though you're getting a ton of kills, how important are those kills? So Aspas, I still think he is looking quite good, and maybe Ascent, even though he got a lot of kills and weren't very impactful, maybe that's just, you know, a bit of an off game for him. But I don't know if we're seeing the same chemistry with his teammates that he had on Loud, especially because he wanted to play with Noswar, and Noswar is now on Furia. On Split right now, they have a 0-3 record. They've gotten dumpstered on that map. So far, they've only played it at kickoff, but they lost 3-13 against 100 Thieves, 10-13 against Loud, and then 3-13 again against Sentinels. So they've only won 16 rounds total on this map. Their next map is against Sentinels, so that's probably a loss. Even if they find some semblance of chemistry and, you know, good strategy, are they able to beat the Madrid winners? I just don't see it. And the main point that I want to talk about with this team is they have won 1 out of their last 4 second maps. So even if you lose the first map when you're playing against Leviatan, you have a pretty good chance to beat them by just winning the second map, shattering their confidence, and just being more resilient throughout the entire match. That is something that Leviatan needs to clean up. They need to find that resilience. They need to find that ability to just grind games out, because you can't just win off of individual talent. It can only get you so far. While, you know, Aspas and Kane and Calm even at times, they can look very good, but when you have all these pieces together, the talent might not necessarily mesh. And I just haven't seen anything from Leviatan, even though it's been a small sample size, to really say to me that this team is going to be the super team that they were, you know, deemed before the season even started. So I am very concerned about Leviatan, and their upcoming schedule is really rough. They are against Sentinels next, so that's probably a loss. After that, they're against Energy. That's probably a loss. Then they're against G2, up in the air, and then they're against Crew, also up in the air. Those last 2 teams should be teams that I have full confidence in them being able to beat, but right now, I don't know if this team beats anybody. So I'm very concerned for this team, and it would just be a huge disappointment for fans of this team, for players in the team, if they just aren't able to put much of anything together this year. I don't know if they make playoffs. It's a tough road ahead. That loss against C9 was very, very devastating to their chances. So we'll see how it goes for them, but again, I just don't know if I see it. So moving on to our last team, you might be confused as to why Loud is here. They've only lost against Energy so far in the regular season stage. And this is after their players were stuck in Visa Limbo, so are you really going to give them a lot of flack for losing against a really good team in Energy while being completely jet-lagged? No, I'm not going to do that. I don't think that that loss against Energy is something to really be super concerned about, but there are some troubling signs when it comes to Loud that I've been talking about in past videos, stuff like their character comp and it maybe not being as flexible and as good as other teams. While it was able to catch teams by surprise in kickoff and, you know, maybe 1 or 2 teams at Madrid, it doesn't seem like it's a sustainable character comp with that Phoenix breach, so that is concerning. So far, their MVP is less. He's been their most consistent player in my opinion. For the map on the board, we have Sunset. They have a 3-4 record on, so you might be confused, why did I put down this map even though they have a at least decent record on it? Well, the reason is because they're starting to lose on this map. So they did start off pretty well on it, beating Evil Geniuses. They then lost to Sentinels on it. Then they beat Funplex Phoenix and then Edward Gaming, so the 2 Chinese teams. But after that, they've now lost 3 in a row on Sunset, Sentinels, Paper X, and Energy. So maybe their map pool isn't as deep as we once thought it was. They do have a very good icebox. Their Ascent is all right. And their next match is against Cloud9, a team that they should be able to beat. I don't think that they're going to go out like Leviatan did. And they do have a 2-week break, so they'll be able to get accustomed to, you know, the time zone, and they'll be able to get the practice in. So if there's any time to be jet-lagged, it was probably that first match. And one of my main concerns about this team is they haven't beat a non-Chinese team since March the 2nd when they beat Evil Geniuses. So it's been a long time since we've seen this team beat a team that wasn't a part of arguably the worst region in the game. Again, it's only been the first match since Madrid, so talking about this point might be completely irrelevant next time they play, but it is something worth mentioning. You know, if you're really able to dominate in your region, but when you go to international tournaments you're not able to conjure up much of anything, then that is reason to be concerned. But I do think Loud's going to clean it up. I think they're going to be pretty good and pretty dominant within the Americas, but I don't know if I see this team winning an Americas title or any title this year. It just seems like it's too much of an uphill battle, but we'll see. So those are all 6 teams that I wanted to talk about today. Let me know in the comment section down below what you thought of this video and what you think of all these teams. Please click like if you enjoyed the video. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.